moment. How will we be remembered? Look at the opportunities before us.
This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about we the people choosing our government and the choice between freedom versus tyranny.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
What is going on here is deeper than politics. It is deeply spiritual. We are being called to rise above the hatred and the fear and the evil.
We need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors, that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated.
You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative.
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing!
Don't you want healthy children? Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
I come to you today as a former Democrat. I will be a first-time Trump voter tonight.
The people dreamed this country, and it's the people who are making America great again. Making rock and roll.
Good evening, my friends. Welcome to the Audit the Vote podcast. I'm your host, CEO of Audit the Vote PA, Tony Shoup. I wish somebody could film me backstage when that video is playing because I'm back here dancing in my shed and probably look like a crazy lunatic, but it would make good filming for sure. Lola Days, it's great to see you guys. Please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast that we are doing every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Also hit the bell so that you get alerted when we go live. I'm going on a really cool trip for Easter I'll talk about in a second, and I might have a chance to go live and share some of the moments with you. If you did not know, April 19th is the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's Midnight Ride that started the Revolutionary War back in April of 1775. So this April 19th is the 250th anniversary. And then at 5 a.m. was the shot heard round the world. And me and the family are actually headed up to a reenactment tour with Patriot Academy, with our Patriot Academy family, called the American Legend Tour. And I'm going to get to experience that for the first time in Lexington, Massachusetts, on the exact area where it was actually done 250 years ago. So that's going to be neat. And on Easter morning, we're going to have a service outside of the National Monument to the Forefathers in Plymouth. We're going to have an Easter service there all together with, again, my Patriot Academy family. And so I'll try to go live and share some cool footage with everybody. So like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell so you get notified when we go live. We have another incredible story for you. I get to introduce you to someone who I haven't known that long, but you become fast friends with people I've discovered in this insane freedom movement because you've dealt with a lot of similar things, but everybody has an individual take in their own story. And I think that God is using each and every one of us in different ways. And I'm super excited to get to interview Shane Jenkins tonight. He is the co-founder of Stand in the Gap Foundation, an organization that is leading the charge on helping rehabilitate J6 families. We'll have him share a little bit more about that. And if you feel so led to contribute and donate to their cause. But before we get into that and I bring Shane on screen, the only announcement that I have is I finally booked my next class. My next Patriot Academy class that's all via Zoom is called Foundations of Freedom. It's not technically a new class. Wall Builders has had it for a while, but it's new to me. So I have not offered this to my students or my audience ever. So we will be going through this for the first time together. And I pulled the trigger on when I was on the tour last week, our Republic If You Can Keep It tour. It was great to see many of you. Thank you to those that came out and to everybody that helped at each individual event. We hit Erie, we hit Pittsburgh, we hit the Northeast in Bloomsburg, and then Montgomery County, East Norriton, and the Southeast part of the state. It was incredible experience, just fellowshipping with everybody and connecting with all the like minds out there. But back to that graphic, Joel, go back to that graphic. Sorry, I'm ping-ponging all over the place and driving Joel crazy probably. But I realized halfway through the tour, I was missing an enormous opportunity because a lot of the folks that showed up had never taken any of our Constitution classes, Patriot Academy's either Biblical Citizenship or Constitution Alive. And so about 15 minutes before I was about to head on stage, I think for night number 3, I finally whipped this flyer up and got a QR code. And I don't even think I got it in the slideshow, but at least it's live. So May 1st, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. The class will go from maybe 8 to 10, 2 hours. If you've never taken one of the classes before, you must take this one. This is, I think, in my experience, the easiest way to keep grassroots organized and energized. I hear all the time from other activists like myself that one of the hardest things that people are facing is how do we keep volunteers? How do we keep them from getting burned out? How do we keep them like just involved in the fight? And even when things don't go our direction, keep them their mindset positive. We're in a war here, and we are literally fighting for the survival of posterity's sake, and we cannot stop, but it's not going to be easy. And these classes do exactly that. So go to patriotacademy.com. You can see everything there. There's a bunch of different programs. This in particular is part of their Constitution Coach program. And I would love to see as many of you as possible join me on Thursday night, May 1st, as we dive into the founding documents. We've got David Barton, Dr. Carol McSwain, I'm saying that wrong, Glenn Beck, of course, Rick Green, and many others are actually guests where they interview, and we're going to really crack open the documents and just learn and sharpen one another. There will be a great discussion afterwards. And Lola's in the chat saying, send your kids and grandkids to a Patriot Academy Leadership Congress. Her son attended the one in Dover, Delaware last summer, and will tell you that it was just tremendous. Not enough good can be said about it. Patriot Academy holds these leadership congresses in state capitals across the country. And then their big shebang is in Texas. It's going to be on the campus in Fredericksburg that they're building actually right now. And it's just incredible leadership, incredible speaking skills. But more importantly, you get to run through a simulation of what passing a bill looks like. You get to write a bill, you argue it in the committee, you learn all about that process. So all those things that when I woke up in 2020 and started trying to connect with the legislators and figure out how this whole thing worked, how were they able to shut the schools down and force our kids to wear masks and all the other crazy shenanigans we had to experience? Well, I learned when I went through this Congress event to Patriot Academy exactly what the process looks like. And that is truly where the fix is going to be for the next generation. So check that out too. That was a mouthful. Back to the tour. Now Joe can get rid of this, get rid of the flyer. This will be up on all our socials. I'll also send an email blast out so you can sign up. It's free. There's absolutely no cost to register. And I would love to see you guys May 1st, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern daylight time. So last week, this is just a quick recap video. Joel did some really good highlight reels of our Republic If You Can Keep It tour that we did across the state. Dr. Frank was our keynote speaker. He knocked it out of the park every night. I think the grassroots loved connecting with him. There were plenty of people that had never met him before. Of course, he's been on the ground with us since May of 2021. So I had heard a lot of the stuff that he presented, but many people did not. And it was just a really good experience to see, okay, who still wants to be involved? The dust has now, but Joel, we got to get rid of that picture. My favorite, vote by mail, vote early. No, bad news. Lancaster District 36 lost their race because low propensity voter Republicans who requested mail ballots didn't actually vote Republican. Separate story, separate video. If you're not following us on social media, we are at Audit the Vote Official on Instagram. We're at Audit the Vote on some socials. We're at Audit the Vote PA, which I probably need to synchronize all of that. Mostly at Audit the Vote PA. Barb and Becky, there they are, our star volunteers, volunteer coordinator, our donor relations folks. Thank you guys so very much that all helped put these events together. They could not have gone any better. And we're looking forward to growing and doing these once a quarter on a regular basis moving forward so we can keep the grassroots like energized and keep us together. There's a reason our state party meets every quarter. They have state committee meets once a quarter. And so the Patriots, we're going to meet once a quarter too. And we are going to figure out how we're going to take back local control of our elections. So with that, Joel, if you will, you want to see these highlight reels, you need to be watching us on social media. They are all over our social medias. So feel free to check these out. I had Joel with me just the first 2 nights, so he wasn't able to come to the entire tour. So we've got highlight reels from night number 1 and night number 2. But anyway, I am looking forward to bringing on our special guest tonight. His name is Shane Jenkins. He is living in Houston, Texas, and I'm looking forward to hearing pieces of his story that I haven't heard. I met him at CPAC for the first time. Of course, Sarah Maccabee, my incredible friend Sarah, I connected with Shane through Sarah. They are actually co-founders, business partners with Stand in the Gap Foundation. But Shane met Sarah because he was in jail with her husband, Colton Maccabee. And that was their connection. And so when I met him at CPAC with Sarah and she introduced him as her business partner, it was like, oh my gosh, this is the other half. This is awesome. So we got to spend some time with him. Of course, you guys saw the Lego Man interview, Robert Morse, that we did. And I met Robert actually through these guys and been wanting to get Shane on here. And so I'm really glad that Joel and him were able to connect and we were able, there we are at CPAC. I love Sarah's red pants. I need a pair of red pants, I've decided. And Shane's shirt just coordinated right along with it. But that's when we met for the first time. Of course, I met a lot of other January 6ers, but I'm looking forward. Like I said, I know some of Shane's story because we had dinner with him one night and got to spend some time asking him questions and getting to know his background. But I'm looking forward to learning more right along with you guys. So without further ado, Joel, if you will bring Shane on screen, there he is. Welcome, Shane, to Audit the Vote podcast. Thank you for taking the time out tonight. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's an honor. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. He was just in the studio, setting up his studio back there before we came on live. And Shane, give people a little to start out. Just give people a little bit of your history. Kind of, I don't even know this. Like, were you always involved politically? Give us just like a snapshot, whatever you feel led on, kind of your background that got you involved in this crazy MAGA movement in the first place.
Yeah, so that's a really long story. I can go way, way back. I obviously look like my past, so I have a very interesting story. I found out I was adopted whenever my life was normal up until about the age of 12 or 13. And I thought my mom was my mom and my dad was my dad and my sister was my sister and my brother was my brother. And that was not the case. And so one day my sister was in town visiting. We were living in New Mexico and we got into this big fight. I don't even remember what it was about, but she looked at me and looked at my mom and she said, if you don't tell him, I'm going to tell him. And I was like, tell me what? And then my mom later that evening pulled me to the side and told me that I was adopted. And I was just like, it was like somebody had jerked the rug out from underneath me. I felt like the kid in class with the sticker on his shirt, you know, that says kick me or whatever. I felt like everybody was in on it except for me. Everybody knew what was going on with my life except for me. And so I felt betrayed by my adopted family. And then I started to look at my biological family and I started to wonder, like, what was so wrong with me that my own mom didn't even want me. And so I look at my pictures of me as a kid. Sorry, I get choked up about it, but I have like this little redheaded, blue-eyed, freckle-faced baby. And I'm like, what is so wrong? Like, what was so wrong with me that she didn't even want me, that she could just throw me away like that? And so at a young age, like, I feel like I had an identity crisis. And so
you're breaking our heart already. We're pretty early into this.
Yeah, sorry. Well, it is what it is. It's a blessing, and I know there's lots of people that have struggled with adoption or gone through adoption or whatever, and so I feel like my story, um, people can relate to it and people can be empowered by it. So that's not the end of the story, though. So, I remember consciously thinking like Shane Jenkins is a lie, so I have an opportunity to create a persona of who Shane Jenkins is and what was a man to me, right? As a very immature, wounded, angry young man, I decided that what I thought a man was like something off of like Scarface or Goodfellas, or one of those guys that when they walked in the room, like people were like tense, they were afraid, they had a healthy fear and respect for those people. And I thought that's what a man was. So I set out creating this persona, this facade of what I thought a man was. And so it led me, I really kind of checked out from school, stopped really engaging in sports, and my classes, started skipping school and started running with the bad crowd at school, doing like small crimes. And
what age was this? Was this like,
this was like 13, 14. Like this was probably like my freshman year of high school.
okay.
And so I really, started getting involved in petty crime, and this was in New Mexico. And I remember the police came to my mom, and I had got arrested for some things and ran away from home and just done some dumb stuff. And the cops told my mom, they're like, "Look, Miss Jenkins, if you guys will leave town, we will drop all the charges against Shane." And so my mom was like, "All right."
That's an interesting agreement.
Yeah. My mom was like, "We're going to sell the house and we're leaving." And so we moved back to Texas, and this was probably, I was 15, I would say, at this time. And so I wanted to go back to New Mexico. So I remember I stole one of my mom's gas credit cards and a knife from my nephew, and like carjacked a guy at the age of 15. And drove, I know it's horrible, but I drove all the way back from Texas all the way to New Mexico, and was arrested 3 days later. They extradited me back to Texas. I ended up getting a year probation. While I was out on the year probation, I turned 16, and I was running with the bad. Because I was looking for somebody to give me my identity, because I felt like I didn't have an identity of who I was. So I was running with these kids who were affiliated with gangs and all these different kinds of things. I wasn't actively a gang member.
Wow.
But I remember 2 of my friends got jumped by a rival gang that night, and I found out about it. And I ended up getting in the car with them. Not probably 10 minutes after I got in the car with them, they shot and killed a guy and shot 2 more people while I was in the car with them. The guys that had jumped them earlier, they shot him. And I was here. The kid they killed was 16. Here I was 16, the same age. And I witnessed it. They dropped me off at home, ended up going and getting rid of the gun and all this stuff. I ended up getting arrested. They all got arrested. I got arrested. The driver got 40 years for murder and 2 attempted murders. The passenger got 10 years. They were both 18 and 17. And then I was 16. And I got, the prosecutor told me, like, if you plead guilty to this, we're going to give you 2 to 4 years as a juvenile. If you don't plead guilty, we're going to charge you as an adult, take you to the adult county jail, and you're going to go to adult prison when we find you guilty. Because in Texas, even if you're just in the car with somebody and they commit a crime, it's the law of parties. So you might as well pull the trigger if you're in the car with somebody that commits an act like that. So I go to prison at the age of 16. Really kind of get my life back on track. As a juvenile, it was juvenile prison, Texas Youth Commission, and I got sentenced to 2 to 4 years. And, I got my GED, ended up getting my high school diploma. I became a certified welder. I started taking college courses. They were actually busing me into town to go to the local community college in Gainesville, Texas. And so I started playing football again. There's this movie about it, but they were bussing us out to play football in the Texas Association of Private and Parochial Schools. So I went to a private school early on in life called All Saints. We ended up going back and playing football against those people, but I was in prison this time. And so let me just
interject really quick. This is the Lord orchestrating this, because our backgrounds could not be. I was Susie High School, like total complete opposite.
Right. Yeah.
And so there's no other. The Lord connected us for sure, and our paths crossed right at the right time. Because as you're telling this story, I'm sure some of my audience can relate, but I'm like, just if my jaw is dropping, Shane, don't be offended. I'm just like, wait, what?
No, I believe me, I know. I live it. It is a crazy, crazy story. And
But redemption, I mean, the redemption side of it's going to be amazing. So I'm sorry I interrupted. Keep going.
No, you're fine. So I get out, I get released at the age of 19. My football coach from in the juvenile prison had a connection at the University of North Texas, and he wanted me to go play football there. So I was like, sure, I'd love to go play some college football. I think it was D2 football or something. But I went from 3 years of confinement to a college campus with like 30,000 kids who's never been away from their parents in their lives. And so it was just a recipe for disaster for me. It was drinking and girls, and I ended up dropping out of school about 3 months later and moved back home to my mom's. And she had decided to remarry and remarried this guy who was a Vietnam War hero who was a violent alcoholic and drug addict. And she didn't know that going in. And I didn't know it. I was just concerned as long as she's happy. That's what I was hoping. She asked me, do you care if I get remarried? Because my adopted dad had passed away and all this stuff. And so,
she just glossed over that. Oh, just death of a parent. No big deal. We'll just keep going.
Yeah. Well, I was 16 when he passed away. And
I had no idea how compelling this was. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep going.
So, at the age of 20, I'm living with my mom, and I didn't realize it, but I was working too. I was like working for Home Depot during the day and valeting cars at night. Or I was working for a trash company like Laidlaw Trash Company, and then valeting cars at night. So I was gone like 80 hours a week, right? And sleeping when I was at home the other time. And so, my stepdad went to jail twice for beating my mom, unbeknownst to me. And then my mom told me one night, like, she was terrified that he was going to kill her or beat her to death while I was not there, and I wasn't going to be there to help her. And she was so like they do in abusive relationships, he really isolated her from any family or friends that she had. And I was like her last lifeline at home. And so, things had escalated at home. He had threatened to kill me. He had pulled a gun on me, and there was like he jumped out from behind a door and held a gun to one of my friends' heads. And
who needs reality TV? Like,
yeah. Well, and I'm a 20-year-old kid, like, and I'm big, muscular kid, but it was a lot. And so, but I had been living this crazy kind of lifestyle, chosen this crazy lifestyle that I was living in. Here it was in my home. And so one night I came home, and he basically, my stepdad confronted me downstairs. He had been drinking, and he aggressively like grabbed me. He's like, "Come here, boy, I need to talk to you." And I was like, "Man, you need to get your hands off of me." And he basically told me, "You need to move out." And I just told him, I said, "Look, I'm not leaving unless my mom asks me to leave, or unless she sells the house." And I was waiting I had completed this program in juvenile prison where they would pay for your apartment for the first 6 months. And I had requested that money so I could get out on my own, but it hadn't come in yet. And I told him, I said, unless one of those three things, she asked me to leave, she sells the house, or that money comes in, I'm not leaving. Absolutely not. And so I knew my mom would never ask me to leave, and she told me she was terrified. And so he grumbles and mumbles and goes upstairs, and not 2 minutes later, I hear them like arguing and screaming and whatever. And I run up there, and I'm like, "Look," I said, "the conversation we just had is between you and me. Please just leave this alone." And he gets really aggressive, and he's like, "I'm going to kill you, MFer." And there's a shotgun laying right within reach of his side of the bed. And it was my Remington 1100 20 gauge semi-automatic dove hunting shotgun, but I didn't know how to clean it, so it never got cleaned. So you could shoot a shell out of it, and it would get caught in the chamber, which is important later in the story. But so the doorbell rings. I just tell him, like, "Please just calm down. I'm gonna my friend's here. I'm gonna go downstairs and talk to him." So my friend was there, and we were standing at the door, and I kind of told her that we were having some domestic issues at home or whatever. And so she left. Well, we always kept a gun by the front door. And so when she left, I grabbed the gun and took it and set it on the coffee table in the living room. And I don't know how long it was, but a time later, I hear this thud upstairs, and I hear like my mom scream, and like, he's already threatened to kill me, and he's got the gun up there, and I already know he's been to jail twice for beating my mom. So I grabbed the gun and I run up the stairs, And when I get to the top of the stairs, I reach to grab the door handle because the door is closed. It was open before. This time it's closed, and I just reach gingerly and touch the door, and it's locked. And then I hear him in there tussling and him calling my mom all the C word, the B word, whatever, anything you could imagine that you would never want to hear somebody that you cherish more than anything in the world called. So I step back from the door, and I'm just like, and I kicked the door in. And when I kicked the door in, he was laying in bed with the shotgun pointed at the door that I just came through. And he raises up, MF, I'm going to kill you. And he raises up and shoots the gun and misses my head by about 6 inches and blows the top of the door frame off the door with the dove hunting shotgun. And I would like to say that I stood my ground and shot back, but my mom was between me and him. And so I ran downstairs. I don't think I touched a single stair the whole way down, and made it to the kitchen and grabbed the phone. We didn't have a cordless phone at that time. We had the one on the cord. And so I called 911, and I'm down there on the phone and crouched. All the lights are out downstairs. I'm crouched down in the dark behind the counter on the phone with 911, telling them that my stepdad just shot at me and tried to kill me. And my mom comes down the stairs, and she's like, don't call the police. He was just trying to scare you. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, are you freaking crazy? And so I just stayed on the phone, and I'm crouched down. She's standing literally right next to me, and the moonlight is like shining through the windows, because we had like vaulted second floor ceiling in the living room. And I could hear him. He's like, I'm coming. It's like some bad cliche, like Western. I'm coming to get you, boy. I'm coming to get you, MFer, and this, that, and the other. And I remember seeing him coming down up the stairs and then coming down the stairs. And he got down about 10, 15 feet away from me, almost to the bottom of the stairs whenever I just said, that's close enough. And I jumped up from behind the counter with the gun, and my mom's standing right next to me. I'm on the phone, on the other hand, with 911, and I start shooting, and I shot 13 times and hit him 11 out of 13 times, and he fell to the ground. And then the 911 operator's like, what was that? And I was like, I'm freaking shooting. And they're like, oh, I don't know what they're doing, calling all cars, whatever they're doing.
In fairness, he did try to shoot you first.
Yeah, he did. And he did have the shotgun coming after me again. Like he was armed when he came down the stairs the second time, or down there that time. So I shot, I believe they said 7 times, and then he shot again, but out of I guess because he had been hit, out of reaction. And then I shot like 6 more times. He falls to the ground. I asked 911 what to do. They're like, have your mom get the gun away from him. So she hands me the gun. I take the guns out to the front yard and set them at the foot of the driveway. And eventually fire truck finds her. I had to go run down to the end of our street because we lived in a new subdivision in North Fort Worth, and flag down the fire truck. They wouldn't come in the house until the police had come to clear the house out. And so finally the cop shows up, handcuffs me, sits me down on the curb. Then the fireman can go in there and get to him. Well, they end up taking him to the hospital. They set me in the back of a cop car, and they take him to the hospital, and I'm sitting in front of our house. It seemed like forever. And they put crime scene tape around the car that I'm sitting in, and the guns are at
before January 6th, quite a bit.
I'm 20 years old. This is like 1997 or 1998. Yeah. And so here I am, a young man, witness people being shot. I've shot my stepdad at my own hand, and this homicide detective shows up at our house, like while I'm in the back of that cop car, and he walks up he goes inside and he comes back out and comes to talk to me. He goes, hey, Shane, he goes, I've listened to the 911 call. I've got your mom's statement. I got your sister's statement. And he goes, I feel like this is a open and closed case of self-defense. And I said, yeah, I mean, I didn't really say anything. And he goes, can you tell me, are you on probation or parole or anything? And I said, yes, sir. And because I was still on parole for the attempted murder charge that I had. And I said, I'm on parole for attempted murder. And he goes, he said crap, except he didn't say crap.
You're just, having met you, you're such a sweetheart now. Like, I would have never guessed that this was your backstory. So
no, absolutely.
keep going. Jesus is real, people.
And so interesting little side note, the officer that was the first one to arrive at the scene was the chaplain for the Fort Worth Police Department. And I remember, you know, the homicide detective told me he died on the way to the hospital. So we're going to take you downtown and get your statement. And I remember riding with that officer downtown to go to the homicide department office, whatever it was. And he was just sharing his faith with me and sharing Jesus Christ with me. And I just felt like that was like one of the first times like Christ had been pursuing me, and I was like in the fire. And so
wow.
I'll never forget, I probably shouldn't say this, but the homicide detective was, you know, he's typing the statement up and he's like, so he goes, "You're on parole, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "So that gun was your mom's, right?" Like, yes, sir. That gun was my mom's. And but I ended up getting released. I was supposed to be released on a personal recognizance bond the next day, and oddly enough, my juvenile parole officer was there as I was being released, picking somebody else up, totally unrelated to me. They ended up taking me back to TYC, and I had to file a bunch of appeals to get released on just released. And so a lot of people see me arguing with people on Twitter about, you know, about Ashley Babbitt's shooting and stuff like that, because I know like what it is to self-defense, defense of a third party, and things like that. And so the grand jury eventually no-billed me for, I had been charged with murder, but the grand jury eventually no-billed me. But as much as that felt like a pardon or a cleansing of that situation, like I just was not, part of me, the persona that I had created would say he got what he deserved. You were protecting your mom, you were protecting yourself. But then I feel like my spirit and my heart was just like, you just killed your stepdad. You killed somebody that you've lived with for a year. I know his son. He is somebody's son. You know, it's a human life. He was a Vietnam War hero and all these things. And it's just like, on the one hand, I want to be like, F that guy. He beat my mom and this, that, and the other. But the other side of it was like, man, that was somebody that I personally know and live with and attended their wedding and all these things. And so I really, really had a problem dealing with, I couldn't deal with that. Like I couldn't process that. And so I had this spiritual war going on in my heart and my soul, I feel like, and I just couldn't come to terms with it. So I started turning to alcohol and drugs and women, and I started selling drugs and doing a lot of things to numb what I was feeling, because if I could be high or if I could be drunk and I didn't have to deal with the guilt and shame from killing my stepdad, I didn't have to deal with the trauma from my adoption identity crisis, I could just ride the wave of whatever drug or alcohol that I was on. And so that led me to adult prison. About 3 years later, you know, several cocaine possessions and a fight that I got in that went really bad.
So you're like the perfect person for them to pin January 6th on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. He's violent. There was like, he's got a murder charge in his past. Of course. Yeah.
Perfect.
So, I mean, I think that's what I saw somewhere that says, you can't really say that you are peaceful unless you have an extreme propensity for violence. And so I think you have to know what violence is to know what it is to be a peacemaker. But so that led me in and out of prison 3 different times as an adult in the state of Texas. And the third trip before I went in, my mom passed away. And
was this your adopted mom? Did you ever connect with
my adopted mom? Yeah, I can get into that. It's a whole nother interesting.
We'll have to have you back for that one, probably.
No, so I'm sorry I'm going so long on all this.
No, this is good. And people, please share this, because this is what I feel led to do, is just get everyday people's stories out there and show that there is redemption and that you can make an impact in the world, because clearly that's exactly what you're doing. So share this, please. Keep going, Shane.
Yeah. So in 27/11, July 11th, 2012, my mom passes away from an accidental overdose of Ambien and hydrocodone and wine. And so, as if I needed another reason to turn to drugs and alcohol, here we go. So, not long after that, I end up headed back to prison again, and I had already been twice. And so I was at a strip club. I got into a fight with two guys. They called the cops on me. The cop showed up and grabbed a hold of me, and I ended up body slamming the cop. And I had drugs on me. And so here I am headed back to prison in Texas. 3 strikes, you're out, pretty much. So I was looking at 25 to 99 years. The first offer they gave me was 45 years. By the grace of God, they only gave me 2 years, and I ended up going back. And so this was the first time I had ever been in prison. Like, when I would go to prison, my mom was like right there with me. She was visit me all the time. She would buy me commissary. She would write me letters. She would, whatever it was, talk to me on the phone, whatever it was, she was all in about it. And she would tell me, son, she's like, I know you don't like it in there. She goes, but I don't have to worry about what's happening to you out here when you're in there. I know you're safe for the most part. And so this was the first time I had to do a bid without my mom. And I just remember getting denied parole 3 years in a row. And I heard about this program, which ties us back to politics, but it was a program called the Prison Fellowship Program, which was started by Chuck Colson, who was the hatchet man for Richard Nixon. He took the fall for Watergate. He ended up getting like 5 years federal time. Before he goes to prison, he accepts Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior, and he goes into prison, a saved man. And so he meets all these men in prison, and before he gets released, all the men tell him, well, like, Chuck, don't forget about us. And so he says, I'm not going to forget about you guys. So he gets out and he uses all of his political connections, because he was super connected. He was the hatchet man for Richard Nixon. He knew everybody, right? And so he created this program called the Prison Fellowship Program, and it's an 18-month program based around the life of Jesus Christ. And it's offered in federal prisons and state prisons all over the nation. And I had been denied 3 different times parole, and I heard about this program. And I was like, if you get accepted to the program and you complete it, you get out. And I wasn't saved. I was worried about getting out. And so I apply for the program. Not long after that, I get accepted, and I get transferred to the prison here in Houston, Texas, in Richmond, in Fort Bend County. Shout out to Troy Nels. That's where he's from. But so I get to this program, and in prison, I'm fairly tall guy. I'm like 6'1". I play basketball like every day. And so I get there and I'm getting to know the guys, playing basketball with them every day. Well, in about 30 days, I got there the day before Thanksgiving. I think December 19th, Charm Prison Ministry is set to come into the prison, and they bring these volunteers that are like 6'8", 6'6", 6'9". And some of these guys, like former San Antonio Spurs, Harlem Globetrotters, these guys are awesome basketball players. And so the guys are like, hey, we want you to play with us when they come. We're going to put you on one of our teams, and you're going to get out there and play. And so they came in there, and they brought the Giants, and they kicked our butts. And the only game that we won was the game that my mentor was covering me. So it was pretty funny. And I always give him a hard time about it. But we played basketball for 3 hours. In between games, the volunteers are in there sharing the gospel, sharing their testimonies, and ministering to people.
Cool. And
oddly enough, like I would politely just be like, I appreciate it, but that's just not for me. But on this day, like God had been tilling the soil of my heart, and he took my mom from me, I think, so she could come down off that altar in my heart. And for whatever reason, I was open to the gospel that day. But so 3 hours of basketball, we go back to the dorm to clean up, and we're going to go to the chapel, like all 300 of the inmates, and they brought brisket and gumbo and dessert and all this stuff. And I don't know if you've ever had prison food, Tony, but
I have not.
you don't want to try it. It's not good. But so we're all excited going back to the chapel to eat, and we go and we come in the door. I'll never forget the volunteers that have played basketball are sitting there in the regular seating in the chapel, eating their food and giving us a hard time about how bad they beat us. And then I turn down to the right, and they've got these folding tables set up over there, and there's these women in there. And I was just like, I'll never forget like them glowing and smiling and this joy that they had and this peace. And I just didn't understand it. And I just thought about how much I hated prison. And I thought about the path of destruction that I had left. That was my life. You know, I have by this point, I have 5 children by 5 different women. I've been in and out of prison. This is my 4th time in prison. And I felt like this tall, and I just thought about how do these women take their time and their money and their time away from their kids and their family to come into prison, and they are happy to be here, to be around somebody like me who has just made a wasteland of my life. And I just didn't understand that, but I know now that they were the hands and feet of Christ. And so I'll never forget, I get my food and I go and I sit down at the table, and something just broke inside of me. And I look back on it, and it's like I'm sitting there just weeping over this food, which was absolutely delicious. But it's like Jesus is standing there, and he calls me son. He's got his hand on my shoulder, and he calls me son, and he gives me that identity that I had been seeking my whole life, that I had been pursuing and not understanding what my identity was. And in one word, he gives it to me, son. And it just blows me away when I think about it. But then, you know, I think about it. He says, I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. So I don't have to worry about like my mom abandoning me or being a throwaway. And then I think about there is no guilt and shame in Christ. And so I don't have to carry that of killing my stepdad. I don't have to carry that. And in those like moments sitting there before they even brought the gospel message, like I had my encounter with the King of Kings. And so I eat my food. We go, they have musical guests, and then they deliver a gospel message. And at the end of it, they say, you know, would anybody like to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior? And so I jumped up out of that chair and raised my hand and said, absolutely. And, you know, fortunately, Charm Prison Ministry has all the pictures of all of that. And it was just a phenomenal, life-changing experience. It changed the whole trajectory of my life. And he salvaged my destiny. You know what I mean? And it was like,
what a testimony. And right before Easter, please share this if you're a fellow believer. I am just, when I think I've heard like the craziest testimony, then something else comes along like this that I'm just like,
right. Well, so I just got to this program, right? I had only been there a month, and I didn't plan this, like, but God planned it, right? He knew the time and the day that this would happen. And so I still had to go through this 18-month program about the life of Jesus Christ. And what better person than somebody that's just accepted him. And so, you know, I really started to heal from some of my traumas and deal with some things that I had been struggling with. But in that, digging into the word was really where my politics sprang from. My foundation in the Bible was where my politics sprang from, because again, this was 2016, and Trump got elected before I came to this prison. And so I really started to dig into the word where, you know, talks about, I knew you before I laid the foundations of the earth. I know the amount of hair or lack of hair on your head. You know, and he, you know, it really spoke to me about the value of the unborn. And I really became passionate about life, you know, and anti-abortion and pro-life. And so that's really kind of where my foundation began. And then I began to watch the news and watch them go after Donald Trump and Russiagate and all those things that were starting to happen in 2016. And so I fast forward, I get out, oddly enough. I don't know if you really believe in like numbers, but I got out July 12th. which was the day 6 years and a day after my mom had passed away. So it was really the first day of the 7th year, which the 7th is the
Oh my gosh.
completion. And so I just felt like my mom was like, and not everybody gets out the same day. It's kind of like when they tell you, hey, Jenkins, you're going home on the 12th. And it was just kind of like, I just am kind of like, really, God, and like, really, Mom, you know? And so I get out and I moved to Houston. I moved to Charm Prison Ministry. They have 8 transitional homes housing about 75 to 100 men who've had an encounter with Jesus Christ. They also go into the prisons and play softball, basketball, and volleyball. But as well, they house these men and we don't call them like halfway houses. We call them transitional homes or discipleship homes, because that's what it's set up to, is walk out your faith post prison. And we're part of Houston's First Baptist Church, and we're just really, it's discipleship. And so that's what I did. I ended up getting on staff about 6 months later. I committed to a full year there, and I did that year. Then I went back to the oil field, probably around September of 2019. I get a really good job. And then about 3 months later, I get an even better job. And I still had a home that was tied up in my divorce that I went through in 2016 and all these things. And I was trying to save this house because my wife had neglected the taxes, the HOA fees. And as a part of the divorce agreement, she was entitled to a portion of the sale of that home. So I get a mortgage. I take equity out of the home, pay off my HOA fees, pay off the taxes and that. But now I have a mortgage on my house, and I bought 2 vehicles. And then February rolls around, and OPEC and Russia decide to have an oil price war because Russia didn't want to join OPEC. And so Russia was like, we're not doing it. Well, Saudi Arabia and OPEC was like, we're going to cut the price of oil overnight in half. And so they did. And I remember I was going on days off, and my nephew was one of my supervisors, and I was like, hey, where am I going to go when I come back? And he said, well, you're probably not coming back. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not coming back? And he said, well, the price of oil actually hit 0 and went negative for a time last night. And I was like, oh man. So now I've got 2 vehicle payments and a mortgage, and I'm going to have to try to figure out how to do it. And then a week later, COVID, like March 2020, COVID hits. And so now you've got the demand side of the oil and gas industry just drops because they're not really flying that much. They're not traveling that much. People are kind of locked in their homes. And so they definitely shut the oil field down. And now I've got to try to hustle and get these things paid, or decide what I'm going to pay and what I'm not going to pay. But that was really, and at that point, I really, really kind of honed in on politics and started following very closely in my spare time. COVID, you don't really have, it's like Netflix and Hulu or whatever, and whatever else.
Down the rabbit holes we go.
Yeah. And so I got off parole in December of 2019, right before COVID and all that. And this was going to be the first time that I had ever registered to vote in an election. First time I'd ever been able, or first time I had ever wanted to vote, And so, yeah, I voted early in Texas. I voted in October. And
in October.
Yeah. And like the end of October. And then, I moved back to Houston. November 1st was the best man at my friend's wedding on November 1st. And I watched the election on November 3rd, and like watched it till like 10:30, 11 at night. And I was like, oh, we're back in there. And then I wake up the next day and they're like, well, guess what? Trump lost. And I was like,
what?
Are you kidding me? And so, so that kind of just really opened the door for me to, like, I was making really good money. I was selling roofing at this point in Houston, and I'll never forget. I ended up getting fired because I confronted my boss about kind of stealing from his employees and me. And so I got fired like the first week of December. And then Trump sends out that tweet. I think it's like December 12th or December 19th. And he says, come to DC, join the Stop the Steal rally. And then in all caps, it said, will be wild. And I don't know if you know, but like, if it's wild, you can count me in. And so, and I was past, this is the first election I voted in. And you're going to tell me I've seen all these videos from Atlanta to whatever it was, and the more people voting in a county than were registered, and like all the you know that you're.
It was so obvious, right?
Yeah,
like they stole this. It's so obvious.
And with my background, as far as being in the street life and being in prison, there's one thing that we don't like is somebody stealing something from you. And so when you feel like somebody stole an election from you, I mean, you at least have to go raise your voice. We'll say that. And so
First Amendment right to protest.
Absolutely. And so I ended up booking my flight to DC, got my hotel room. I tried to get my oldest son to go with me. I try to get friends to go with me. No, thank God nobody went with me. But maybe if they would have went with me, I wouldn't have gotten into the trouble that I got in. But
so I don't you went by yourself?
I flew.
Wow, I've heard a lot of stories like that. People that just felt like I'm going, and no one wants to come with me, and I'm going.
That's right. No,
wow.
Absolutely. And like you say, you have a republic if you can keep it. And so I take that to heart. I believe that, like these slogans that our forefathers said and these things, like I take those things to heart and personally, and I believe them. And I don't think that I believe and now that it's coming out that they're saying they did manipulate and steal the election, it's like, okay, if you're a concerned citizen and you believe that they are subverting the election process and stealing an election, what is your obligation as a citizen? Like what, and I know that gets ugly and that gets in the weeds and, violence and he's in the insurrect and these things like, but what is your, to me, if this was in the 1700s or the early 1800s, I know what it would mean. And they would be like, we're not putting up with that crap. We're going to DC and something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I just think about that. I don't know if it's the wussified culture that we live in now that people are. I'm not saying you want to go to the Capitol and drag people out or anything like that, but there could have been many different things. Whether it was like just have a sit-in inside the Capitol or whatever it was, to obstruct or whatever you're going to do. I don't know what you can do, but I think that legally there was probably more actions that could have been taken.
100%. Pence could have. He chose not to. He could have sent the states that sent 2 sets of electors back to be investigated, not overturned the election, to be investigated by the state legislatures further before deciding, and let the states decide, okay, shenanigans happened, shenanigans didn't happen. He could have done that. In my opinion, he cowered it out and chose not to.
They owed us at least that. And that was was my desire. And I posted on social media. I wanted them, if there was a state that was won by a small margin, like a lot of them were like 8 to 11, 12,000 votes. And you had these clear questions of like the registered voters more than were in the county, whatever, voting, like you have to take a look. You owe the American people that to look at that. And so I believe that they staged January 6th to sabotage that, like, because they could say, well, we were going to do it or we were going to object to the election. But now, since you guys tore up the Capitol, we're not going to do that. Well,
Kelly Loeffler, never forget. Do you know that name, Kelly Loeffler? Do you remember her?
Why does that sound? That sounds very, very familiar.
She was the Georgia senator. There was a Senate race right before January 6th in Georgia.
Right? Yeah.
And she stood on stage with President Trump and said, I will object to the electoral college or whatever. She was going to be one. And we needed a senator. The way the process works is you need someone in the House and someone in the Senate to object to the electors in order to halt the process and send them to their separate chambers to deliberate. So we have more House reps than senators. So we really needed senators. So that was a big deal. And then she was one of the first people on January 6th. And I'm driving home in my car that day, listening to it on whatever we were listening to it on, hearing her say that, well, since President Trump caused this insurrection, whatever, she pinned it all on him and totally backtracked and said she was not going to object. And I will just never forget that. And I don't care. I don't like that woman because of it. So she's in the Trump administration now. Yay. That's a separate topic. Talk to me about January 6th. What did you see? What did you experience on J6? Did you go inside? Tell us all about that.
Yeah, so I did not go inside. I did go inside the Lower West Terrace Tunnel and witness some horrible stuff there. I will say prior to that, though, at the Ellipse and the sea of people from the Ellipse all the way to the Washington Monument and just the atmosphere of like this church or praise and worship concert to people singing and dancing and playing games. It was just something that was phenomenal. And some of the fiery speeches by like Mo Brooks, who later, I don't even want to talk about that, but there was some, some nice rhetoric and, people.
Yeah. Congressmen know how to talk. They can talk a good game, but do something.
Right. Yeah. But it was a beautiful day, and I was so intent on insurrection that day that the people that I met at the DFW airport on my layover, they wanted to go to their restroom at the hotel and freshen up. So I went with them because we were, you got to use the restroom before you go commit an insurrection. And then while they were doing that, I went to Starbucks and I went to Starbucks and got coffee and protein packs for everybody because you got to fuel up right before you're going to storm the Capitol.
Before you overthrow the government.
Right.
Yes.
Shout out Starbucks. So they come down, I give them their protein packs and coffee, and then one of them pulls out their phone and they're like, oh my gosh, they stormed the Capitol. And I was like, look, y'all please be careful, but I have got to go I'm going to see what's going on. And they were all like, most of them, and I was like, I'm going, this is history. I'm not missing this. And, underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, whatever you want to call it. But here I go.
I've been in enough trouble. I'm going.
Right, a little storm in the Capitol. I've been in way worse trouble than that. Yeah. So I thought I had anyway. So I'm like sprinting to the Capitol. And again, people will wonder, why would you take a tomahawk to the Capitol? And so I had been watching Braveheart and I was just like, whatever. But they told us that people had been jumped and stabbed and robbed and beaten and all that stuff in the protests prior from November 3rd till January 6th, and they had several rallies.
Yeah.
And people have been seriously injured, and they were like, look, be prepared. And people wonder, why did they take all that pepper spray and all that? Nobody took guns. There was a handful of guns, I'm sure, but
they forget about the Summer of Love and the Antifa riots that were happening in that time.
And my hotel was I was right by I forget what, BLM Plaza or whatever it was. But so here I am running to the Capitol, and I get down there and I saw a guy, he looked like a National Guard guy, helping people over this little barrier wall. And I don't know what he was, if he was or not, but I was just thinking, okay. And I'm under the impression that in any other day of the year for the last hundreds of years, that's public property. You can be on Capitol grounds and all this stuff. And so I didn't think anything about going up there. And I remember going around to the west side of the building, and I was like, wow, they've got people climbing all over the scaffolding. And I was like, it looked like somebody had kicked an ant bed and they're just climbing all over everything. I was like, holy crap, I'm going up there where they're at. And I know, if somebody else would have been with me, Shane, please don't go up there.
Yeah.
But that's just, I was on my own. And so again, not the, whatever, but
still mild compared to other decisions you made.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I end up climbing up. I'll never forget. I'm climbing up to the lower West Terrace, and there's this cement guardrail. And I remember grabbing that rail, and I just hear this whisper in my head, and I'm like, Shane, this is dangerous. And I stopped for a second. I'll never forget. And it was like, okay, well, why are you here? And I just thought about my children, and I thought about future generations of this nation. And I was just like, this is whatever is going to happen. And if it's dangerous, then it's worth it for me. And I chose to go over the barricade. And when I did, it was people crying, bleeding, people had been pepper sprayed, tear gas. They had been hurt, hit with batons and stuff like that. I didn't realize all that yet, but I see them it's crying and moaning and groaning. It's completely different from what I saw at the Ellipse. And so I make my way up to the window to the left of the lower West Terrace, which I didn't know that the lower West Terrace, maybe as I got up there later on, I was like, this is where the president comes out and puts his hand on the Bible and swears in on Inauguration Day. And I'm like, this is getting serious. And that tunnel right there where all those police are is where he walks out of. And so presidents for hundreds of years have done that. And I'm like, holy crap. And so I remember standing there on that window ledge, and I saw this old man coming out of the tunnel, and he had a hat on just like this. It was the mesh. And I remember seeing him come out of the tunnel, and he was like blood was like pouring down his face. And I'm like, what is going on? And I remember I took out my phone and I took a picture of him. I still have the picture, and I zoomed in and I took another picture, and I was like, what is going on? And so I start to see these people that have been injured in the tunnel, like making their way out of it. And I remember thinking, like, we're going in the Capitol, like, that's just what we're doing. I don't know why. I'm assuming we're going to go have a sit-in or whatever. I'm not going to go in. So my brilliant thought was, there's a window behind me. People are getting the crap beat out of them. And I was like, the window is replaceable. Why don't we just break the window and go in the window? I know. And so again, one of many
still wild compared to
right.
other decisions.
Right. So I pull out my tomahawk. Well, this is what happened. I'm standing there, and somebody says, like, I'm knocking on that window to see how like sturdy it is, and somebody says, they said, you can't break that window. And I was like, don't tell me I can't do something. And so I'm just being honest, and I know people are like, you terrorist,
you're pardoned now, let's let it rip, we can talk now, right?
Yeah, you murdered that window, like that window made a move, we had to get it on, you know what I mean? So
this is great.
I pull out the tomahawk, and I'm just like, I hear some guy like, yeah, like, let's go. And then I'm like, so I start hitting the window, and then the people are like, no, wait, what are you doing? And I was like, okay. So I hit it like 6 or 7 times, and the crowd was like noticeably displeased. And I was like, we're not Antifa, we don't do that. And so I was like, okay, whatever. So I put the tomahawk up. And I take my backpack and I leave it there. And I was like, if y'all don't want to go in the window, I'm going to go in the tunnel and find out why they're beating the hell out of people. And so I immediately come down off the ledge, and I start making my way into the tunnel to see what was going on, why these people, because from what I could see, I didn't see anybody striking police. So in my mind, there's no reason for the police to be striking them. They had their riot shields, they had their helmets, they had like these shoulder pads and things on. And I was like, there's no reason. Like it was more of like this. There was like this heave ho. The crowd was pushing against the cops were pushing people out. Like, and that's kind of just what it was. Nobody was being overly aggressive or anything until later on. And I make my way into the tunnel. Before I even get up to the front of the police line, I get pepper sprayed in the face 4 different times. I end up having to turn around, put my hoodie up over my head, and I start working my way through the crowd backwards. And when I get up to the front of the police line, this officer, and I didn't realize all this until after the fact, because we were sitting in the DC jail for so long that I could analyze these videos, and there's body camera footage of me working my way through the crowd. Victoria, I don't know if you know who Victoria White is. So when I finally get my back is to the police line, there's a woman right here in a red MAGA hat. I believe she's from Minnesota, but her name is Victoria White. And I found all this out later. But an officer, Captain Bagshaw from the DC Metro Police, pulls out an extendable baton, one of those where you got to sling it and it comes out with the ball on the end of it.
Yeah.
He pulls out this baton, and he just starts, and this lady had a MAGA hat on, and that's the only, she never took an aggressive move. She never said anything to that man, because you can hear the audio on the police body cam. But he starts he doesn't ever like rear all the way back, but he takes that, and he's just like hitting her over the head as hard as he can with this little range of motion, which that ball on that thing is solid, and those things hurt. And you're not, so SOP for police officers, they're trained to not hit in these areas because they can cause brain damage and be potentially fatal. And where's he going? Exactly the head area. And so he strikes her on police body cam footage 32 times in or about the head. And at one point in one of those areas, he strikes me from behind, not facing him, not fighting the police, not doing anything. He hits me on the top of the head from behind, and I've still got a dent in my head. I've got like pictures of it and all that stuff. But he hits me, and then at one point he pushes her head back and tries to jab the baton into her eye socket. And we've all watched it and seen this footage. All the guys in the gulag, and Joe McBride released it on Twitter. It's probably out there. So look up Victoria White. Beat in the Lower West Terrace tunnel. But
wow.
So at that point, like somebody popped open some tear gas or something, and I couldn't breathe anymore. I worked my way out of the tunnel.
Joel, see if you can pull that up. Victoria White beat in the West End Tunnel. See if you can find it.
Lower West Terrace Tunnel. And then
Lower West Terrace Tunnel.
I eventually like suffocate and I can't breathe. I climb over the crowd to get out, go back to the ledge where I was at. And this guy who I know now is Ryan Nichols, who would be a good interview for you, by the way. Marine, you know, and he gets on a loudspeaker, megaphone, and he says, "My dad just texted me and he said they just shot somebody inside the Capitol."
Oh, wow.
And so I've watched people be brutalized. I've been beat. And now they're telling me that they shot somebody inside the Capitol on top of they're stealing an election. And I'm just like, and I just remember thinking, you MFers, right? And so that's her. That is her, but that's outside the tunnel. Yeah. That's not it. This would the footage would be inside the tunnel, but that's her right there.
In the red MAGA hat. Okay. Is that you beating?
That's actually me. No, that's not me. That's me in the blue hoodie right there, though, talking.
Oh, look at you.
But you know, so she gets she was actually protecting. She didn't want people hitting the window, which was her prerogative.
Wow. And then she got hit in the head by police.
That's her right there. Yeah, that's the footage of her right there. So she's bloody. I mean, she had knots all over her face and head, but I came out of the tunnel and then they say, you know, they killed somebody. They shot and killed somebody inside the Capitol. And so at that point, I pretty much lost my cool. Unbeknownst to me, there was a girl right there at the like less than 15 feet from me named Roseanne Boylan, who was at the foot of the stairs. And this is the footage right here on the left little mini screen. That's him striking her. You probably have to zoom in on it, but it is brutal. Like, and there's no at no point does she ever raise her hands like like she never is being aggressive going towards the officer. It's always like, stop, why are you doing this? What are you doing? And I can remember hearing those screams, you know, like, what? Stop, quit, what are you doing? And but when I came out of the tunnel and then I heard they shot somebody outside, it was just like, you know, enough is enough. And so I started picking up stuff off the ground and started throwing it at the cops, and they got me for throwing 9. It was a funny little side note. At one point I had a desk drawer because they went in that window right there that was broken eventually. Somebody eventually broke it all the way out. They pulled out a coffee table out of there and it had a drawer in it. I ended up with the drawer, threw it to the police, but the judge at my hearing was like, "Mr. Jenkins, I don't know if you just always carry a desk drawer around in your backpack with you or not." But I didn't have it. It came out of the window. But so they charged me with 3 assaults on federal officers, destruction of government property for the window. They charged me with obstruction, obstructing a official proceeding in Congress.
But of all the people I've talked to, your charges at least kind of match what you physically did, whether it was warranted or not.
Absolutely. But they don't take into consideration the things that were going on. And I, you know, again, a girl died, Roseanne Boylan,
right
in the same area, right there when all this is going on. They refused her aid. They gave the officer Lila Morris, who struck her. So Roseanne, let me paint a picture. Roseanne Boylan is laying on the ground in front of the Lower West Terrace Tunnel. She's turning blue. People are attempting to get her aid, and as this is going on, an officer walks up and tries to like roll her back out into the crowd like a trash can or something, and the crowd literally freaks out. You can see them like going. I see them hitting her with the batons, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's a woman, and she's not doing anything. And so, but this officer Lila Morris strikes Roseanne Boylan while she's unconscious on the ground with a walking stick about the size of a silver dollar around. Strikes her in the head 3 times with this walking stick and breaks it on the 3rd time. That very same officer, Lila Morris, they gave her a Congressional Medal of Honor or its equivalent. They set her at the 50-yard line of the Super Bowl several weeks later, which happened in February, and treated her as some kind of hero. And there still has not been accountability for Victoria White. There still has not been accountability for Ashley Babbitt, for Roseanne Bowen, for Benjamin Phillips, for Kevin Greason. 4 protesters died that day. 0 police officers died on January 6th. And there needs to be accountability for it.
Amen. Which is one of the reasons why I think I feel led to do this, because we can't I refuse to just let these stories go just because you got pardoned and Trump's back. And no, a republic, if you can keep it, this is the if you can keep it part. We have got to tell the real story for the next generation.
Absolutely.
So we have a shot of maintaining the republic. Okay, so crazy. January 6th, here's what I'm hearing, was absolutely crazy.
Right.
You did break some laws.
Yeah.
And talk to me about, like, when you left. When did you leave? Like, how did you feel when you left there? Did you feel like, oh crap, I probably shouldn't have done that, I'm probably gonna get in more trouble?
I did. I left right after I threw all the items at the police, and I left out a part where I escorted an officer, Miller, to safety. He got drug into the crowd, and I protected him from other people trying to assault him, escorted him to safety. So it wasn't just like, oh, F the police or anything like that.
Right. You were protecting like human beings. Yeah.
It was the heat of the moment. I was a poor ambassador for Christ, and I will say that. I got caught up in the moment, but it's also, I believe it's the duty of the professionals, the law enforcement officers. It's their duty to protect and to serve the general public, not protect a building.
Yes. Or the government.
Right. And so I did leave right after that, made it back to my hotel room, and actually I didn't. I got stuck at my friend's hotel, and they issued that curfew, and so we couldn't leave. The not famous picture, but the picture of me with the hoodie on, the 1776 hoodie, and I've like got my hands out. The police are confronting me outside of this hotel because I was like, I've got to go to my hotel. It's like 7 o'clock, and they're like, there's a curfew. You need to go back in. I'm like, I don't have a room here. I need to leave. And I felt like it was like Russia or China. They had like 150, 200 police officers outside this hotel. Eventually the next day, made it back to my hotel, and it was I mean, I turned on the news and I was like, oh, so blow over. It was, protests got a little out of control. Mostly peaceful, right? Like the guy said in some.
It was actually mostly peaceful.
But I remember changing the news channels, and it was just like, oh my gosh, every channel, January 6th, insurrection, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh my goodness. And then I ended up flying back home, and I just was like, man, out of all those thousands of people, like, nobody's got a face tattoo. And, I thought I was going to be, everything will be fine. We'll be okay. And little did I know that, March 5th.
March 5th. Okay. 2021 is when you got
arrested. Okay. Yeah. Or a pre-dawn raid by Houston SWAT and the FBI.
Nuh-uh.
Absolutely. They pulled the armored personnel carrier up in the front yard with the hatch popped, both ends of the street blocked. Shane Jenkins, this is Houston SWAT and the FBI. You need to come outside with your hands up. And I didn't hear all that, but my roommate came running in there, and he's like, hey, Shane, the FBI's here. And I was like, man, quit playing, man. It's like, what time is it?
Really got my
and he's like, I'm
together.
serious. The SWAT team's out there. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh God. And I'm like putting a shirt on, and at this point I had a half Great Dane, half pit bull. And he's like looked and sounded ferocious, but he's just a big baby. And I end up going to the front door, and he comes flying out the door behind me. And I'm like, Rocky, no. And I'm like trying to walk out with my hands up, and he's like flying. I was like, you're going to kill my dog. So I like grab him and just physically throw him back in the house. And they take me into custody, and the Houston SWAT was nice. They're like, man, we love dogs. We went in the house as soon as I just said, tell him to kennel up. And he went right in his kennel. They locked him in his kennel, and he was good. But they literally took me from that moment and put me in a cell in FDC in the Federal Detention Center, Houston, and locked me in a cell for 11 days straight. No phone calls, no showers, no nothing. Because they said you have to pass 2 COVID tests to be able to come out and take a shower or to be able to make a phone call. And here I am, like, involved in one of the most high-profile cases in the FBI history. And I've got people concerned about my well-being. I've got things. I need to try to get an attorney. I need to try to get things going. And they refuse to let me out of my cell, refuse to give me access to a phone. I got one phone call in like the first 30 days. After about 30 days in Houston, they put me on Con Air, which is a thing, and flew me to Oklahoma City. I ended up making my way to Northern Neck Regional Jail. I was there for a time and then ended up in DC like mid-April. And again, in the DC jail, they put us in quarantine, left us in solitary confinement for 17 days. But I'll never forget, all the men, the January 6th guys were in C2B, and we were in this quarantine wing with C2A. So we would stay over there. But I'll never forget, every night at 9:00, we could hear them singing the national anthem. And it was just like, we would stand at the door and we would sing with them, or we would hear it. And it was just like, those are our people over there. You know what I mean? And so,
was your experience, since you had been to prison before, was your experience after the J6 prison situation different than what you?
Absolutely. I've never been denied we were denied access to haircuts and nail clippers for a whole year. We were denied religious services for 2 years. That means communion, going to the chapel, Bible study, like bringing in volunteers. Usually they would take you to the chapel for Bible study or church service on Sundays, whatever. And they denied us that. They also denied us visits with our family for 2 years. So we raised a lot of hell in there. Like, we would passively protest. We would link arms and sit down, and then we would organize. We're like, hey, when they call cell time tonight, like rack up, we're coming out in the day room, everybody, and we're like when they call the goon squad in here, we're going to link arms, and we're telling them we're not going in until you address some of these issues that we're dealing with. No visits with our families, like that is ridiculous. Everybody else in the jail gets visits. They were given. See, we would go to medical and talk to the other inmates throughout the jail. And they would tell us, yeah, we're Muslims. They let us go to the mosque. They allow us to have the religious exemption for the vaccine, because they were trying to force us into getting the vaccine. They were saying, we're denying you visits because you won't get vaccinated. We're denying you religious services because you won't get vaccinated. But they let the Muslims have a religious exemption. They wouldn't let the Christians do it. And so I had never encountered anything like that. And I mean, they labeled us domestic terrorists. They labeled us white supremacists. They throw us in a jail that's like 99% black. The officers, 99.9% black. And what do you expect the treatment to be? And it was intentional, and it was very deliberate. And so,
what do you think is the difference between, you think it was J6 or was it a federal prison? Like, what do you think the intent, or what have you seen? I know Sarah in the criminal justice system, she opened my eyes just a little bit because I haven't seen a ton, but what did you learn about the criminal justice system?
Well, this again, you got to consider where we are. We're in Washington, D.C., which voted 97% for Biden. Any officer that was usually above a regular officer or a corporal, like sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, assistant warden, were predominantly black, African-American women, and lesbians, and absolutely would spit on the floor at Donald Trump's name. And so these are the people that are the overseers of the regular officers. Fortunately, we bonded with some of these officers. We were able to tear down those walls of like, oh, we've heard you guys are, because they had at first it was 2 goon squad officers working our pod at all times. And we never did anything. Like, they're like, this is wasted resources. They expected us to be like rioting. And I don't know what they expected, but that's not what we were doing. We were having Bible study and prayer circles and singing the anthem every night. Any holiday, we would try to have a meal together when we weren't on solitary confinement. Like the first year, we were only allowed out of our cells for like an hour a day or 2 hours a day.
Like, if I were you, I'd have been like, shoot, I've done way worse things and didn't get treated half as bad. What the heck's going on here?
It's the politics. It was absolutely political. And it was, in this situation, the process was the punishment, and the courts punished us as well. But I always tell the men, like, it was my honor to suffer alongside those men. Those men are my brothers, and they are my family. Just like you see the bond that Lego Man, Rob, and I have, like, that is forged in the fire. And those are not relationships or friendships that I take for granted, nor will I ever take them for granted, because those men, I watch those men, and somebody like me with the background like I have, that has been in trouble. You say, okay, your actions on January 6th, you warrant the treatment you're getting. Okay, I can accept that because I will accept that. However, Jeffrey McKillop, Special Forces Green Beret, Jessica Watkins, Robert Morris, 82nd Airborne Infantry Rangers, Ryan Nichols, James McGrew, Thomas Webster, Daniel Caldwell, U.S. Marine Corps. I'm talking Army, Air Force, law enforcement, prison guards, Colton McAbee, Deputy Sheriff, Thomas Webster, Marine, honorable career, 30 years at NYPD, 10 years on the governor's detail in New York. Never been in trouble in his life. They gave that man 10 years because he watched a woman be assaulted by a police officer at January 6th, and he attacked the police officer because it pissed him off so bad that he jumped on the police officer. They gave him that man 10 years because he was a police officer and because he was a Marine. And these people, I watched them go through divorces. I watched their loved ones die off. I watched them lose homes. I watched them lose businesses. I watched their families abandon them. I watched their churches and their communities abandon them. I watched their families testify against them on the stand at trial. And so these are good, honorable men who don't have any criminal history. I am an exception to that. There was a few exceptions to that. Some guys have criminal backgrounds, but I feel like God handpicked me to be there in that situation, to be able to be a voice of reason, to say, hey, because the guys always want to complain, this food is awful, we need to complain about, like, okay, dude, prison food is bad no matter what. So just let's get over that. But these other things that are basic human rights, these are things that we can protest and object to. And so I feel like God allowed me to be in there to share, to be a voice of reason and to be a leader in there. And I value, I'll never forget. I mean, it was history. It's something that I'll never forget. And I would do it all over again if I had to.
How'd you meet Colton, and talk to us about starting Stand in the Gap? How did that all come together?
So Colton, man, love that guy. He is the deputy sheriff. I believe he was a sheriff for 8 years. He came in kind of late, but we met because I got put on I forget, like the trustee detail. And so the guys were like suffering in the cells. They had them locked in a lot. And so we kind of befriended this officer, and we're like, hey, can we start having Bible studies? So when the guys are locked in their cell, we can get them out. We can bond over Bible study and share the word. Right. And so that's kind of when I got to know, we call him Mac. We don't call him Colton, but we call him Mac Attack. But that's when we started talking at Bible study. That's where we kind of got to know each other. And then I had begun to cast the vision for what I thought would be useful, which was the Real J6, and then for Stand in the Gap. And he introduced me to his wife. He put me on the phone with her, and it started a conversation. We started the Real J6 as an LLC to kind of just, we were doing a monthly newsletter, and people would share their testimonies. And it was just an alternative route, because some of the routes were kind of, not to sling mud, but they were just kind of messed up. And so we wanted to provide a route that we knew that we would be good stewards of. And we started sharing people's testimonies, and we started doing calls to action. We started putting things out there for people to call a congressman, write letters, send emails and stuff like that to bring awareness to what we were enduring in there. And so something happened. So Marjorie Taylor Greene and Louis Gohmert came in the jail. They wrote that report, and I believe it was called Cruel and Unusual or Deliberate Indifference. I forget what it was called. Basically, they made a report about the treatment we're receiving in the jail. Then about a year later, I think Troy Nehls came in, Congressman Troy Nehls from Richmond, Texas, down here by me. And he was a sheriff down here for 8 years. He talked to the director, and he's like, how are you denying these guys religious services and visits? Like, it's absolutely unheard of. And so, like, the very next week after he left, we started getting visits. And so here we are. We've been in jail for 2 years, and now you've had, for the most part, Mama Bear out there with the babies operating on one income. No telling where, because there's a few guys from around there, but for the most part, California, Texas, Florida. And so, like, how can the mom afford to fly to DC, to take the days off, to take the kids out of school or whatever, to come up there to visit dad, and they can't. It was the answer. And so we started raising money, and we wanted a bucket that we could put it in that would be tax-free. So we started Stand in the Gap. We started the thing called Operation Love Wins, and we were fully funding families coming to visit. So we were paying for the Ubers, airfare, Airbnb, or hotels, sometimes the meals. And we were paying for it. We got to watch the fruit of that happening. I remember, I'll never forget, I got to watch Billy Cressman's little girl. After 2 years of him not seeing his daughter, I got to see her run into his arms and say, "Daddy," and like put her arms around it. Just something that I will never forget. And our donors got to make that happen, and I got to witness it, and I get to play, I get to serve my brothers and facilitate them getting to see their families again. So
that's how it started. You wanted to help families that couldn't afford to even visit their loved ones. Right. Many of them probably completely innocent in prison, and you were helping make that happen. That is so cool.
Absolutely. And I will give Sarah the credit, because she is the boots on the ground and the workhorse behind everything. Like, I'm more big picture, and she's nuts and bolts, and she makes it happen. So
there's my girl. Oh my gosh, I love her. I've met her. I've told the story a bunch of times how we met at Patriot Academy in the summer, and just instant connection. I could tell we were kindred spirits, and it's not surprising then to hear how this is all coming together. It doesn't surprise me at all. She's a powerhouse and a half. And what happened to Colton, that just, oh my gosh, that was just so awful. But I love that you guys have connected, and I want to support what it is that you're doing. So stand in the gap. A couple questions in the chat we'll get to in a second, but talk to us about, I know Sarah seems to have a heart for reform, prison reform. Talk to us about what Stand in the Gap moving forward. What are you guys doing now?
Right. So right now, and I tell everybody, we've been given presidential pardons, so we've been granted our freedom back. However, our lives are far from intact. And so if you think about basically being kidnapped by the FBI, all of our credit is shot. We've received horrible medical and dental care in the Federal Bureau of Prisons or the DC jail. And we've lost connections with our families and our children. And so those are the three things we're going after right now for January 6th. We're working on credit repair. We are working on fully funding healthcare for all the men and women. And we are working on a thing called Mission Memory Maker, where we're fully funding a 3 to 5 day vacation for the men and women to go with their spouses and their children to go on a vacation, paying for Ubers, airfare, the resort, wherever they're going, so they can reestablish those familial bonds, because we know how difficult that is. And for the most part, none of us have gotten paid anything. And we get out, and now, like, the wife or the mom is like, "You got to get your butt back to work, because I've been carrying your butt this whole time." So the pressure's on the men to get back to work, and the chances of them taking a vacation with their family is almost slim to none. So we want to be able to facilitate that, to where they don't have to come out of pocket for anything, and they can just take the time and go spend it with their loved ones. So that's the pending event. That's like the next year. We're really focused on that. But moving forward, we're also attempting to move the football with the Trump administration on BOP policy and changing legislation we really want to repeal the Biden crime bill. And there's a lot of things about the conditions of the BOP prisons, the DC jail, the way they treated us. And there's a lot of things that have got to be changed, and there needs to be some accountability had. And we're all about all of that. So we are going to, like Chuck Colson, not forget about the men that are left behind, the men and women left behind in federal prisons and state prisons. And Texas has got some things we need to work on too, but that's kind of the direction long-term where Stand in the Gap is heading. We want to invest in these men and women who have had struggles in their lives and who have suffered in these prisons. And we want to start seeing the humanity in them. And, all of our Republican colleagues would say that, we're Christians and this, that, or the other, but they're also the same ones that'll tell you, lock them up and throw away the key. And so we want to hold them to that, like to their beliefs, their faith, and say, Jesus talked about, what did he say? He said, when you came to visit me in prison, and they're like, whoa, Jesus, we didn't come to visit you. And he said, well, if you did it unto the least of these, you did it unto me. So we don't want to forget the prisoner, and we want to invest in them, because one day they're going to get out and they're going to move in next door to you. They're going to move in next door to me. Their kids are going to go to school with your kids and my kids. And so we want to invest in them to give them the best opportunity that they can to succeed when they're released.
And if you're not living it, it's impossible to wrap your head around. Yes, January 20th, I remember I was blessed to get to go to the inauguration. One of my national contacts reached out. It's crazy surreal. We literally rode the same metro on January 6th that we rode on the inauguration. It was
Wow.
insane. So I was sitting at a dinner at one of the inaugural balls when the announcement came that he did pardon the January 6ers. And there was somebody sitting at a table close to me that their son was in prison. They left like right in the middle of the dinner because they were going to get to see him. And that was a huge victory, but people don't think about what now, because reintegrating everything you're talking about, reintegrating into society after having what happened to you and everyone else happen is not easy, and you need support and help. And I just love that. I know I was going to say earlier about Sarah, her and I kind of grew up in the same environment of mentorship where we were taught, if you take your eyes off of yourself and focus on other people when you're struggling with something, it'll help carry you through the struggle because you're not focusing inward. And that's exactly what you guys did with this. And I think that's so neat that rather than just poor me, and you organized and figured out how do we can get through this by helping other people. I think that's so cool.
Absolutely. So, I mean, service, like servant leadership is like what it's about. Like servant leaders lead to see others succeed, not, it's not about us succeeding. It's about seeing, and those are the most important people, the downtrodden and the left behind. The poorest, least educated demographic is those people in prison. And if you look at the numbers of statistics on people who grew up in a single family home, it's predominantly people that had one parent, and typically it's the father that's removed from the family. And I think 75% of all men in prison grew up in a single family home without a father. And so it's just this perpetual generational curse that they suffer and endure. So we want to try to fix that.
Amen. Oh my gosh. So go to standinthegap.foundation/donate. And if you feel a tug on your heart, this would be the number one J6 platform that I would promote because of my relationships with these guys, but your money is going to good places. And so yeah, thank you guys very much for listening to Shane's story. And if you contribute, I'm sure they will do good things with it. Let me see, Lola, what happened to Shane? Here's a question for you. What happened to Roseanne's family? She says, "Mum's the word." Did I miss something? Yeah. What did happen?
I know her family I believe they have kind of started coming around. I know they were very private at first, and obviously nobody, and again, it's that stigma of January the 6th, and nobody wants to be put out there in the spotlight, or again, kicked out from your church group or the VFW or whatever it is you're a part of. And so I believe they are kind of working their way around. I have not had any contact with them, but that is a good idea. Maybe that's a reminder I needed to hear.
Oh, good deal. So they did just want to keep to themselves. I mean, I can't even imagine losing someone in such a tragic way like that. And then having the media paint it as we're, the bad people. We're the bad people. Liberty Lion, Joe Altman. I don't know if Joe Altman, does Joe Altman connect with Stand in the Gap and you guys at all? I don't know. I don't think so.
Not that I know of. No. No.
I don't think so either. I'm trying to see if we hit all the questions. So is there anything else, Shane, on your heart before we wind this down? I usually do an hour, but with you, I'm just like, we're just going to talk and I also think I figured out if I ever travel anywhere with you, we got to keep an eye on you.
That's right. Absolutely.
You will be on my radar now. Like, where's Shane? What's he doing? Does anybody have okay, good. Make sure he's good.
Do you have his tomahawk? Or
I'll have my mama hat on now.
Shane, don't do it. Put it down, Shane.
Put it down.
Step away.
It's okay. I'll put my mom hat on next time we're around each other. Right. Anything? I'm gonna look through the comments. Anything else on your heart you want to share?
I would just say, and I know money is tight, and I know all that, but we could definitely use prayer for sure, first and foremost, and especially going into Easter, please lift us up in prayer, and especially all the other January 6ers, because, I get calls all the time from, and I have my days too, but I did my last year in solitary confinement in the Bureau of Prisons, and we endured traumas that were not good. And there's days that like, I just don't feel normal. And there's guys call me all the time saying, man, I'm going through it. I'm having a really hard day. If I can't, they want to be normal again. They want to be whole. And so, please pray for the mental health of the men, and just, keep us in your thoughts and prayers. And, reach out if you have questions. Reach us at info@standinthegap.foundation, and yeah, just keep us in the prayer. If you want to throw us $5-10, anything helps as well, and it enables us to continue to fight the fight, not only for January 6ers, but for other people that need our help. So,
Amen. I feel like J6 and election integrity are, I just posted this on our Twitter today, on the Votes Twitter, will forever be connected. We have this because the reason we were there on J6 is because they stole the election. And when they took, I've recently connected with Brandon Strzok, and he and I have had some really good conversations about this. When they took you guys, that they put the people in jail so no one else would stand up. Thank God he raised many people up like myself that kept going, and we're like, no, we need answers. We're not going to get to the bottom of this because a lot of you guys were rotting in jail and you couldn't. They literally just cut your voice out. So we were that voice, I feel like, that helped. And by the time culminating with the 2024 election, and President Trump getting back in is a miracle, plain and simple, because very little was fixed, just enough fixed in our state to allow him to eke through. But we have so much work left to do, and it's by no means out of the woods. A republic, if you can keep it, means we have to fight to pass the torch of freedom to the next generation, if we're even able to rescue, which I think we've been given a second chance with the Trump administration. And I think that we need to take that seriously. We can't just sit on our hands, which you guys obviously are not doing. But we've been given a second chance, and it's what we do over these next really 2 to 4 years. 2 years are critical, but that's not to say after the next midterms, regardless of how they go, I don't know what life looks like after President Trump. Like, I can't even think. People ask all that, what do you think about JD Vance? What do you think about, like, I can't even, there's so much that we've uncovered, and we've seen corruption go so deep. Like, I can't even fathom that. Can you think about life after President Trump? Like,
oh no, I can't. It is a bit daunting, and I just feel like every day that goes by, I'm just like, are they gonna fix this? Are they gonna start arresting people? What is going on?
Yes.
Like, please. And I know people get frustrated out there, but man, pray for the Trump administration. Pray for them to have the courage.
Yes.
And I wanted to say thank you for serving, because we, the citizenry, are the watchmen. We are the people. This is our country, and it's really it should be an inverted pyramid, because really the people should be on the top, and they work for us. And we need to have these, your podcast or your voice needs to be heard. If there's something illegitimate going on or something underhanded, then people need to know about it. And that's what I love about this whole last 4 years of suffering that we went through, is it caused people to get out of their comfort zone and go to different jobs and do these different things and start screaming from the rooftops and say, hey, this is what's going on. We've got to fix this. We've got to change this. And that is what's going to save this nation. And so thank you for serving in that capacity and doing that and being a voice.
Aw. Well, you are most welcome. I couldn't have. I'm just thrilled that we connected at CPAC and we got to do this. And again, we'll be keeping a close eye on you, Shane, if and when we travel again. I'll be in Texas this month and then again in August, so maybe we'll get to connect in person, and would love to have you back. And I really want Sarah and Colton together. I want to have them together. I know she's crazy just rebuilding their life and all that they have going on, but I'll get there. I talked to Robert. He's such a sweetheart. I'm just looking forward to doing more with you guys. Will you be up for his event he's having in August in Pennsylvania? Are you coming to that?
Absolutely. And I know they're having some get-togethers. They're kind of keeping the dates secret and the places secret, but I will definitely be attending some of the things in the future. So
good. Good. This was the crew that we met at CPAC, all of us, with Sarah and Shane in the middle, and me and Robert and Ashley, Barb, Becky, and Joel on the outside there. So we had dinner the last night at CPAC. We had dinner together, and then you guys got to go to you guys headed to something kind of special. Can you talk about that when you left?
Yeah, we went to I don't know if I should say that or not. We went to the Cash Foundation event, but it was, at Top Golf. It was pretty cool. Met some very interesting people there, if that was for sure.
Interesting is a good way to say it, isn't it? When you meet people in politics, how was it interesting?
Well, we met a lady named Brittany Turner, and she actually employs what is his name? Thomas Ballard, the guy from Sound of Freedom that they made the movie about him.
Tim Ballard. Yeah.
Tim Ballard. She employs him. We met her, and she has an island that she owns, and they do like sex trafficking rescue. And like Rob wanted to be in on the tactical raids, and just a bunch of, so there was some stuff that was there. We met those people, and I was like blown away by some of the stuff that they were doing. And I'm looking forward to serving with them in the future. So But yeah,
Oh,
it was just a good, just interesting to meet people that are serving in different capacities, because I think people don't do that. They're so focused on their 9 to 5 and doing this, that, or other, that you miss all the different ways that you can serve.
totally. Completely. Liberty Lion, I know he's a big supporter of us. I saw that you just had he had another little baby. Congratulations to you and the family. I saw the picture on one social media platform. I can't remember which one, but he looks adorable. So God bless you all. Oh my gosh. Well, I think this is Shane, that was so heavy. I should have asked you a little bit more in the beginning. It was good though. Your testimony, this will get cut into clips and we'll share it, because what a testimony. Oh my gosh, for what you went through just even before January 6th. I feel like most of the people I've talked to January 6th was like a blind side, just like Robert Morris and Colton, like, you know, they had normal lives, upstanding citizens, and then got thrown in prison. And you just bring a whole different perspective to this entire thing. And it's like, I'm kind of wondering, why'd they target you? Like, I don't get it. Yeah. Unless you were getting your life back on track and they just, you know, let's just cut him out at the knees because we don't want him to get his life on track, or I don't know. Do you ever wonder that?
I feel like God chose me for that. I just feel like that I had been through prison, and I just feel like it was my opportunity to serve those men. And I don't know that, like, I know that, I mean, if you look at the process, like, it was horrible, but look at what, like, Stand in the Gap wouldn't have gotten started had I not been in there. Like, and so the opportunity to serve and impact people's lives in the future. But I just think that, like, that's what the beauty of God, like, what the devil will use to destroy you, God will use it for his glory. And just like my testimony, like, you think, like, I used to be like, man, I'm such a victim and I did these things because of this happened in my life. And I think about, man, like, those things happen for a reason, and I've got to use those things to bring glory to God and to share, because I know a lot of other people go through a lot of stuff, and for them to be like, well, Shane went through all that, like, he got through that, I'm going through this, I can get through that too. And so the power of the testimony, you know, will overcome with that. And
that's what Robert meant when he said that I get it now. So you were kind of like the dad that was like, we can get through that. I've been through this. We'll get through this together.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, you guys are very welcome. Everybody have a blessed Easter. Happy Resurrection Day. I know it's pretty neat to see President Trump having services in the White House, a little different than last year. I think they did Trans Visibility Day literally on Easter Sunday. And we have a little bit of a different take this year, which is good.
He is risen. He's
risen. Thank you, Lord. Joel, let's close it out with I will be live again next week. I don't think we have anybody lined up, but we're working on it. We are eventually gonna get Brandon Strock on here. He and I are becoming better colleagues and friends every day. He's an incredible human being, very sincere. Really looking forward to see where Walkaway goes after this, kind of the relaunch of Walkaway after he was completely railroaded on January 6th, didn't even go in the Capitol, and yet his home was raided. And they, you know, he's just even had a civil lawsuit that he won recently. They continue to come after him because I think they really don't want people with big platforms and big followings out there speaking out and speaking the truth of what happened on January 6th. So a lot of good, exciting things coming up. Shane, thank you again so much for your time. We will have you back so we can get into other facets of your story and your testimony, because clearly God has a plan for you and his hand on you. And Joel, let's close out. I had a promotional video for my class that I totally forgot to have Joel play. So let's close out with that video so you can get a taste of what Foundations of Freedom is going to be all about on May 1st, Thursday night at 8 p.m. And then you can sign up, maybe throw the QR code up there for the flyer, and then play the outro video, and we'll call this a night. If you want to stick around for a few minutes, Shane backstage, we'll chit chat a little bit before we call it a night altogether. But please share this, you guys. As my audience knows, I just feel very led to get as many of these stories out as possible, especially of people that maybe they're a little nervous to get on camera, but they have a story and they have a testimony, and we need to get it out. So send them my way, anybody that is willing to do that. And we will see you guys next Wednesday. Next Wednesday? Yes, this is Wednesday. Yeah, Joel, cue up
Hey,
that
fellow
video.
Patriots, I want to invite you to our Monday night class. We've been doing this for almost a year now. We've done biblical citizenship, Constitution Alive, constitutional defense, and it's an amazing opportunity to get together with tens of thousands of people from across the nation. 30,000 people have registered for this class. It's a really great time, really to sharpen each other's countenance, not only to watch the videos from the Constitution classes, but then get some great Q&A time. Mark Meckler and myself almost every week on there talking about what's happened in the previous week. We have special guests from Fox News personality Pete Hegseth to pastors that have hosted the biblical citizenship class in their churches, to David Barton and Tim Barton and all these other folks. It's a really good time. We want you to register and be a part of it. And we're about to do something a little bit different. We've been doing all those Constitution classes. Now we're going to do Foundations of Freedom. It's kind of like a Constitution class, but it's a little different. If you haven't seen Foundations of Freedom, it's a fantastic, I think, 22-episode program that we did on television. It's David Barton and myself and Michelle Bachman, Carol Swain, Glenn Beck, all these special guests going into the Foundations of Freedom, literally diving deep into fundamental questions like, is America actually one nation under God? What does the Constitution say about the law? What does the Bible say about the law, about how we should operate as a culture? It's a really exciting series, and we're only going to do some of the episodes. It's going to be a 6-week series, so 6 Monday nights together going through Foundations of Freedom. I encourage you to get the full DVD set at wallbuilders.com. Lots of great stuff in there, but also join us on Monday nights. Totally free to join us on Monday nights. It's going to be a wonderful time of interaction, encouraging, iron sharpening iron. I promise you, every Monday night, you'll sign off at the end of that class together with all these people from across the nation, encouraged, empowered, and ready to take action to restore our constitutional republic.
Okay, so it's not Monday night, it's Thursday night. That was a promotional video they did a couple years ago when they were first launching that class. So all that to say, we'll continue to share the graphic. Hope to see many of you on Thursday, May 1st. You guys have a blessed Easter, happy Resurrection Day, and we'll see you next week. Have a good night.